Hi, welcome to Benchmark 4 on the respiratory and excretory systems. This is a one-day benchmark and it kind of tags along with Benchmark 3 about the circulatory system. We did talk a little bit about the lungs as being a part of the circulatory system in terms of it bringing oxygen to the blood. The respiratory and excretory systems are just going to be a one-day add-on for this week's lessons. There will be a graded assignment and I'll discuss it at the end. So your book actually puts the respiratory and excretory systems together. And that is because both systems really deal with the same thing, and that's getting rid of waste products. And they're going to filter things out that are going to upset homeostasis. So our driving question really deals with how organ systems work together to maintain homeostasis. If I had to pick one day of the whole project that did the best job answering that driving question, it's probably going to be today's. Because if any of these systems go down, it is most likely the fastest way to take your body out of homeostasis. I mean, yeah, you can have things go wrong with your bones and muscles and skin, but these two systems are really those systems that keep homeostasis and make sure that you're getting rid of waste products that are just natural byproducts of living. So let's talk about the lungs and the entire respiratory system for just a moment. There's no coloring sheet for this system, but you can see the whole thing right here in this picture. So it's basically a pathway for air. Air can enter the mouth and or nose, and it passes through the pharynx. Your larynx follows, and that's where your vocal cords are. Your trachea is a tube that's lined with cartilage rings. This is actually to make sure that it stays open. In severe trauma, if those C-shaped cartilage rings are crushed, it can actually obstruct your airway. And you recall the esophagus is right behind it. And, if you swallowed something really large, you could certainly affect your trachea. And there's a reason that these C-shaped rings are positioned the way they are. They're actually open in the back where the esophagus is so that food can pass freely. Imagine if every time you swallowed food, it got hung up on these trachea rings. That would be awful. So your trachea branches further into the bronchus. You have right and left sides of the lungs, so two different pathways for the bronchial. If you've ever heard of people having bronchitis, anything ending in itis usually means inflamed. And so you can have an inflammation of these main tubes leading into the lungs. That's what bronchitis is. The bronchi divide further. Imagine like trees and branches that keep getting smaller and smaller. There are bronchioles, which are tiny, and they go finally into what's not pictured in here are bundles of alveoli. Now, alveoli are clusters of sacs that are filled with air, and they're covered with blood vessels. And that's where the oxygen exchange occurs. So here's a close-up of the end of a branch. So this is a bronchiole. Okay, so you breathe in, the air flows down into these tubes, and then these little alveoli are air sacs that are covered with blood vessels. And the oxygen in the air that we breathe diffuse into the blood. And one thing that we didn't talk a lot about in the circulatory lesson was the exchange of gases. So we know that oxygen's important, but it's also important for us to get rid of carbon dioxide. A waste product of metabolism is carbon dioxide. And so when we say gas exchange is occurring, it's actually an exchange between carbon dioxide and oxygen. And these sacs are very flexible, and they do retain a certain amount of air so that they don't collapse onto one another. One of the biggest problems with babies that are born prematurely is that their alveoli are not fully developed, and premature babies can actually have underdeveloped lungs and alveoli that don't expand and contract, and it can make them at high risk for respiratory distress. People who are long-term smokers or have been exposed to environmental hazards can actually have problems with their alveoli. not being able to expand with air, they kind of get, they lose their flexibility. They get kind of rigid, and it can make it really hard to breathe. There are also other disorders like COPD, chronic bronchitis. You hear about those all the time. Also, that's common with longtime smokers, but you can have inflammation and obstruction of these airways with mucus over time that make it really hard to breathe. So I really like this diagram. It's very, very simple, but it just shows how breathing can affect homeostasis. In physiology, we call this a feedback loop, where something happens and it can switch something on or off. So carbon dioxide is a waste product. It actually turns into carbonic acid when dissolved in the blood, and that's bad. You get too much carbon dioxide in the blood, it can actually take up space for oxygen in the red blood cells. So it's kind of like if you have too much carbon dioxide, they're taking up all the seats on the bus, so to speak. If you have too much carbon dioxide in the blood, it'll create carbonic acid, and it increases your blood's acidity. Your blood has to remain at a very constant pH. If it gets too low, so the acidity creates a lower pH, that triggers warning signals for your body. And your brain actually will alert your body to increase your rate of breathing. So you're running, you're doing everything you need to do to stay alive. Your muscles release carbon dioxide as a byproduct. This goes into your blood, hitches a ride on your blood cells, and the receptors in your brain recognize that, and your lungs increase respiration. So a lot of times people who have COPD, they can't take deep breaths and get enough oxygen, but on the flip side, they have a really hard time getting rid of carbon dioxide, and this can be kind of a vicious cycle. But as the carbonic acid leaves and as the carbon dioxide leaves the body, the blood carbon dioxide decreases and shuts this system down. All right, so in addition to the lungs, we have other organs of the excretory system. The lungs are technically part of the respiratory and excretory system. The kidneys are pretty darned important too. You actually have two kidneys. You can live with just one, but you can't live with none. It's one of those organs that if phone call during the screencast. It's one of those organs that if they shut down, you're actually probably only going to have hours to live. I mean, it's really, really serious. So you have these kidneys that are directly connected to your major blood vessels. So if you remember, we talked about the vena cava, that's a vein taking deoxygenated blood back to the heart, and your aorta, which is oxygenated blood from the heart. All of your blood filters through the kidneys. So you have some pretty big blood vessels going to your kidneys. Within each kidney are these teeny tiny little cells called nephrons that filter your blood out at the molecular level. So your kidneys regulate a bunch of stuff in your blood, namely water. Your blood volume is controlled mainly by your kidneys. So your kidneys are constantly regulating how much water is in the blood. It can add to or remove. And then any waste products that are in the bloodstream that your body doesn't see fit to use are going to be excreted. So what does the kidney make? Your kidneys make urine. All right. Urine is a liquid waste product. So this is different from the waste product created by your digestive system, two completely different systems. Your body can absorb nutrients through the digestive system into the blood, but over time, if it's not needed, it can be excreted through the blood into the kidney. So for instance, a lot of people take vitamins and, their vitamins are excreted in their urine. It can make your urine like a darker color yellow or whatever. So your urine is excreted. The urine product can vary from person to person. If you drink a lot of water, your body's going to say, hey, we don't need that much water. And when you go to the bathroom, it's probably really, really pale yellow. There's not a lot of dissolved solids in the urine. If you are dehydrated or you're not drinking a lot, your urine might be a lot darker. It's a lot more concentrated. Your body's saving water, and the dissolved solids come out. Things that you never, never, never want to have in your urine. You don't ever want to have blood in your urine. That can signal some issues. And if you ever have a urine test at the doctor's office, it can tell you if you have protein in your urine or sugar in your urine, which can be an indication of problems with your blood sugar. So as your urine is produced in your kidneys and your nephrons, the urine that's produced flows through ureters. That's the tube from the kidney to the bladder. And your bladder is the storage facility for urine. So just like it takes a while for solid waste materials to accumulate in your colon, you have a certain amount of space in your bladder that can collect urine until it's time to go. Everybody has a urethra, which is the exit tube for urine out of the bladder. And your bladder is surrounded by muscles, so you can hold your pee. Most people have the ability to do that, but it also has different sensors that tell you when you have to go. So there's different alerts, I guess, that are sent to your brain as your bladder fills. And everybody's different. Some people feel like they have a bladder the size of a walnut, and some people feel like they have a bladder that lasts for days. So your excretory system is really important. Now, what happens? What happens if your kidneys don't work? This is a pretty serious event. Now, people can donate kidneys if people are in kidney failure. They can take a donated kidney. Yes, you can live from one kidney, but oftentimes people who are in kidney failure will undergo a treatment called hemodialysis. Sometimes it's just called dialysis, but you can see here a dialysis machine is pictured. And this is basically a machine that takes the place of your kidneys. Now, if someone is in kidney failure and they have to go on hemodialysis, it's usually at least 3 times a week to survive. Now, this machine is not going to cure kidney failure. Some people are on it until they can get a transplant. Some people, are using this kind of as an end of life care, and some people choose to stop doing dialysis at a certain point in their life. It is quite a procedure. You are going to sit basically for 3, 4, 5 hours, and this machine will filter your blood for you. It can prolong your life. A lot of people do require kidney dialysis. Kidney disease is the 9th leading cause of death in the U.S., and a lot of kidney disease is preventable. A lot of it has to do with keeping diabetes and high blood pressure under control. Your kidneys have to work in overdrive if you've got an excess of sugar in your bloodstream. And if your blood pressure is very, very high, that can also be very taxing on your kidneys since they're constantly filtering your blood. So people who go through dialysis will sit at this machine. I remember teaching about this before, and someone asked, does your blood cool down? It actually does cool down a little bit. I know it's kept at a somewhat consistent temperature, but my grandpa went through dialysis, and he used to always take a blanket with him because he was always so cold. And usually people are very, very tired after having dialysis, but generally they feel better a day or so after because they have gotten rid of so many waste products from their body. Now, I've talked about the kidneys and I've talked about the lungs. We've already talked about the skin, and I did not get a chance to talk about the liver today, but it was covered some in the digestive system. Here's your homework for today. You can either print this off and fill it out and take a picture of it, or you can just create a paragraph where you're going to tell me what each organ gets rid of and how it does that, like what processes help to get rid of that waste product. We call it the A-team excretory system for homeostasis. Now, I have attached as a PDF some pages from the book. and you can find them linked in this activity in Echo. So this is just pages from your book about the organs of the excretory system, excretion and homeostasis, and they're all there for you. Okay, this is where the assignment is. You can get to the text from here, you can print this, and you can type in the box. How do these organs get rid of waste and by what processes? So this is the end of video lessons for the benchmarks for the week. I will have a lesson for you on hands-only CPR. The benchmark 3 and 4 assessment will be on Friday, so if you'd like to get started on the study guide, it's just like the last one. It's got a code for the book where you can do practice questions. Pay no attention to this date. The Google form is linked in the assessment, but I'm also going to give you the option of doing an IACT of sorts. If you'd rather not do the Google form, you can write me a paragraph called Journey of a Blood Cell. So if you prefer to do some writing this week, you can. I will check in with you this week on the Zoom meeting. I have something extra special to show you in the Zoom meeting, and we're going to focus on the parts of the heart during the Zoom meeting. But if you have any questions about anything, you can let me know during that time. See you then.